Are the interpreters in place now so we can start? Okay, I just got the go. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And I will call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 3 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format and would be our opportunity to speak with the Minister, as well as take questions to the Minister and have some time. I will be asking the Clerk how much time we will have upon the completion of my comments. I would like to start this meeting by providing you with some information following the motion that was adopted in the House Wednesday, September 23rd. The committee is now sitting in a hybrid format, meaning that members can participate either in person or by video conference. All members, regardless of their method of participation, will be counted for the purpose of quorum. The committee's power is to sit, however limited by the priority use of House resources, which is determined by the whips. All questions must be decided by a recorded vote unless the committee disposes of them with the unanimous consent or on division. And finally, to ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow throughout the meeting. For those participating virtually, members may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. 2, before speaking, click on the microphone icon to activate your own mic. When you are done speaking, please put your mic on mute to minimize any interference. 3, a reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. 4, should members need to request the floor outside their designated time for questions, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. 5, if a member wishes to intervene on a point of order that has been raised by another member, they should use the raise hand function. This will signal to the chair your interest to speak and create a speaker's list. In order to do so, you should click on participants at the bottom of the screen. When a list pops up, you will see the next to your name that you can click raise hand. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. And finally, unless there are exceptional circumstances, the use of headsets, as you all know, with a boom microphone is mandatory for everyone participating remotely. Should any technical challenges arise, please advise myself. Please note that we may need to suspend a few minutes as we need to ensure all members are able to participate in this meeting fully. For those participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the directives from the Board of Internal Economy regarding masking and health protocols. Should you wish to get my attention, signal the clerk with a hand gesture, or at an appropriate time, call out my name. Should you wish to raise a point of order, wait for the appropriate time and indicate to me clearly that you wish to raise a point of order. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain the consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Order of the day, I am happy to welcome today Minister Garneau and his officials from the Department of Transport for the consideration of the main estimates 2020, 2021, and the supplementary estimates B 2020 and 21. May I remind all members that the supplementary estimates A were adopted by the House on June 17, 2020, and were not referred to this committee. The supplementary B estimates 2020-21 were tabled in the House and referred to standing committees on Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. They can be found on the Treasury Board website pursuant to SO 81.5. Each committee may consider and report, or shall be deemed to have reported, the votes in the supplementary estimates B not later than 3 sitting days before the final sitting of the supply period, ending not later than December 10th, or 3 sitting days before the allocated or allotted day in the current period, which has not been allotted as of yet. May I suggest that we report them back to the House at the same time as the main estimates, and the deadline being Friday, November 27th. So once again, welcome to Minister Garneau. Minister.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So, of course, unfortunately, as a result of the subsequent points of order after a question period and then the votes, we now see the clock at 4 14, unfortunately, and I just wanted to have the assurance that we will have the minister for the full hour, as well as the department following the minister for the full hour. I mean, we're of course dealing with both the subs and the estimates here. Both, unfortunately, due to just the timing, we missed the opportunity in the spring and the summer, since we weren't sitting at that time. And these certainly are issues of great importance before the entire Canadian economy at this time. So I'm just hoping to get the assurance that we will in fact have the minister for an entire hour, and the his departmental colleagues for a full hour following that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Cozy, and I will finish my remarks because I was about to mention that. Minister Garneau, as I mentioned, welcome. Minister Garneau will be with us for the first hour only, but his officials remain with us for the second to answer questions from members of the committee. I will ask the clerk, because I do want to confirm with the clerk that we will have the available resources to a time. And Mr. Clerk, if you can answer before I go to the minister what time that will be, we would all appreciate it. You're on mute. Mr. Clerk, you're on mute.
Sorry, it also happened to a clerk. Sorry about that. Yeah, I asked all the services. I'm still waiting for answers. I'll come back to you as soon as I have a clear answer from everybody. Technically, we should be able, but I'll
okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Minister Garneau, the floor is now yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur. Oops.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure for me to appear before the Committee of Transportation and to answer the questions that will be asked today on the main estimates. I would like to take this opportunity to wish a warm welcome to all the new members of this committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. There is no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a profound effect on the transportation system in Canada, as well as the work of Transport Canada. Many things changed, and we needed to adapt to the situation of the pandemic. However, we need to take into account other priorities and responsibilities that need to be addressed.
Estimates B for the 2020-2021 fiscal year include items that required adjustments for a variety of reasons. For example, the COVID-19 pandemic created an unprecedented crisis in remote communities that rely on aviation. Air travel is the only safe and reliable way to reach a number of communities for much of the year. Air travel is a lifeline for them. It provides an important link to people and services. While necessary restrictions on travel have kept many remote communities safe, they have also contributed to a 90% decline in revenues for our smallest air carriers. Many of these carriers are owned and operated by the First Nation and Inuit communities that they serve. The supplementary estimates B include support for a new contribution program to support air carriers that provide service to remote communities. These communities must have access to essential air services for food, medical supplies, and other necessary goods and services. We must also ensure that our communities can be connected to our vital transportation networks. L'an dernier, Transport Canada a annoncé son
Last year, Transport Canada announced plans for a new permanent replacement for the MV Madeleine, the ferry that provides service between the Île Madeleine, Quebec, and Souris, Prince Edward Island. The current vessel is 39 years old and is at the end of its service life. However, designing and building the replacement vessel will take several years. The supplementary estimates B includes funds for purchasing a temporary replacement vessel to ensure that efficient ferry services will continue until the new vessel is ready. When that new vessel is ready, the temporary replacement would be put up for sale. This delivers value to taxpayers, in addition to ensuring service will continue in the short term rather.
The speech from the throne emphasized that as we work through this global pandemic crisis, we must build back better together. The speech from the throne also indicated that the Government of Canada is committed to making zero-emission vehicles more affordable and accessible. Canadians' quality of life and Canada's future growth are deeply connected to the environment. We need to invest in a cleaner, more sustainable future to protect the things Canadians rely on for their success, which is an affordable cost of living, good, well-paying jobs, and resilient communities. The supplementary estimates B include additional resources for the Incentives for Zero-Emission Vehicles program to help meet Canada's zero-emission vehicle sales targets. While certain circumstances may have changed and certain priorities have been magnified, our goals remain the same. Comme il a été mentionné dans le discours.
As the speech from the throne pointed out, the pandemic's economic impact on Canadians has already been more significant than the 2008 financial crisis, and the consequences will not be short-lived. We must take action now. For the sake of Canadians now and for our future, this is not the time for austerity. We have an opportunity to take action with smart, targeted investments, as we continue to do through the National Trade Corridors Fund, which also has dedicated funding in this year's Supplementary Estimates B. This is a time for building stronger communities and a more resilient economy. This is a time for building a healthy, sustainable future for Canadians. Thank you, and I am happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. We will start off with Ms. Kusi for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. It's always a pleasure to see you. Well, I'm just going to start this meeting with a bang. The cat is out of the bag. After 8 months, as reported by the Financial Post, it is reporting that you will finally have a plan for the airline sector. Finally, after 8 months. After losing between 27 billion and 37 billion of GDP, after losing 400,000 to 500,000 jobs in this sector, after all other G7 nations giving a median of $30 billion to their sectors before us, after Canada losing 14% of our transatlantic share, after rapid testing was implemented by the private sector, Minister, by the private sector at YYZ and YVR, when that should have been the lead of your government, and most importantly, Minister, after families crying, calling me because they had lost their jobs, they didn't know how they were going to provide livelihoods for their families, CEOs of airlines phoning me saying they felt devastated, laying off workers, wondering how they were going to face their employees day after day after day, families sending me photos of them in their uniforms with children, Minister. Why has it taken you and your government 8 months, 8 long months to respond to the airline sector and provide them with what we hope is this week, finally, a plan?
Mr. Minister.
Thank you very much for the question and a little bit of historical context. When this pandemic started back last winter, our government energies were focused on helping Canadians, and we came up rapidly with programs like the emergency response benefits, the wage supplement, measures to help with rent, measures to help small businesses, seniors, etc. Since that time, of course, we have evolved, and we at the time had no idea how serious this pandemic would be and how long it would last. Now, over the intervening months, we have been able to get a good sense of how much this has impacted the air sector, and you're right, it certainly has impacted the air sector in many, many ways, chiefly because they've lost approximately 90% of their revenues. And that is why, as I've indicated many times in the past few weeks, we have been working on a set of measures that are focused on ensuring that when we come out of this pandemic and during the time that we are in it, that we will still be able to have an air sector that is viable, affordable, and safe.
Well, thank you,
Kusi?
Minister. Thank you, Chair. Well, I have been very proud to act as their advocate during the time that I have been Shadow Minister for Transport Minister. And today, as you go to announce your plan, I will continue to act as their advocate. So, Minister, can you assure me on this call today, in this meeting today, that you will include within your plan protection for workers, that when this money is issued, there will be no further layoffs in the airline sector? Will that be a part of your plan, of the funds that will be provided to the airline sector, that you can assure us that there will be no more layoffs when you give this money, please?
Mr. Minister?
Yes, so well, let me say, first of all, Ms. Kusi, I have no problems with your questions. You're doing your job, which is to ask those questions. And I can tell you that we are looking at a series of measures, and those measures do include the workers that have been affected. I have met with the unions. I have spoken to them. I've heard their concerns. I've met with all of the stakeholders, whether it's airports, whether it's the airlines themselves, whether it's mayors, whether it's provincial representatives. So we are looking at the whole picture in terms of coming up with a series of measures. And when we have landed on those measures, we will of course make them public.
Thank you, Minister. I will now ask you, will you provide within your plan protection for consumers, those tens of thousands of Canadians that have not received refunds from the airline sector as a result of your inability to provide viability for the airline sector? In providing what I hope is finally viability for the airline sector, can you make the commitment today, please, that you will also take care of these tens of thousands of Canadians who have spent tens of thousands of dollars, who have gone into debt and not received refunds? Will you ensure that these consumers are protected, Minister?
Mr. Minister?
Thank you for the question. And as I have said, I'm certainly aware of the fact that there are many consumers who would have preferred to have a refund as opposed to a voucher, and they have expressed themselves very, very clearly on that. Again, as I say, we are looking at the whole picture in terms of the effects of this pandemic, not only on the air sector itself, but on the passengers who make use of that air sector. And of course, as you will know, being a politician, I'm not at liberty to come out today in this committee and to discuss all of the details of what we are going to do, but I can only reassure you that we're looking at the whole picture at this time.
Thank you, Minister. I would also ask, I believe I have 20
Kusi.
seconds left, Chair, according to...
No, actually, we're over by 25 seconds. So, sorry. Ms. Jasek, for 6 minutes.
Well,
Point of
thank
order,
you.
Chair. Pardon me. Do I not get 6 minutes?
You get, did I have you at 5 minutes? I do
Yes,
apologize.
Yes, no, that's okay,
do
Mr.
apologize.
Chair.
Go
That's
ahead, Ms.
okay.
Kusi.
That's right. I appreciate that.
Go ahead. You're
Thank
on
you
mute.
kindly, Chair. Then, Minister, I would ask also kindly that you tie to the plan, please, compensation restrictions for executives, that these funds will not go to executives. And please take care, Minister, of all regional routes. I am asking you on behalf of all regions of Canada to ensure that all regional routes are taken care of in Canada. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kusi. Mr. Minister, with a short comment.
Very, very quickly, again, thank you for your input, Ms. Kusi. And we have very clearly said in the speech from the throne, in fact, that regional routes are a priority for us. We actually highlighted it in the speech from the throne.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Ms. Jasek, for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today and answering all our questions. As you referenced yourself, there are additional resources for the zero-emission vehicle program in the supplementary estimates B. In fact, a considerable increase is called for. Apparently some $52.8 million for the funding of this program, in addition to the $58.5 million requested in this year's main estimates and the $47.8 million already approved in the supplementary estimates A. So it sounds like this program is going to be expanded. I know that when Ontario had a similar incentive program that many of my constituents took advantage advantage of that, and it proved to be very popular. So could you tell us, quantify for us, in essence, what you're seeing as the results of this program since it came into force, and what sort of progressions that are you looking at, or what kind of numbers are you looking at over the next couple of years?
Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Jazik, for the question. As you will know, half of all the greenhouse gas produced in Canada comes from light-duty vehicles or cars. So they are a significant, within the transport sector, I should add, which is a quarter of all greenhouse gases produced in Canada. So it's a significant producer, and we are committed to encouraging the transition from internal combustion engines to zero emission vehicles. The incentive program we put in place a couple of years ago has been incredibly popular, and we want to continue to build on it. And that's a question of building momentum, and that's why we're also in parallel building charging stations as well. Our goal is that by 2025, 10% of sales of vehicles will be zero emission vehicles. And by that time, the prices will also be much closer to each other as well, as prices come down in zero emission vehicles. And secondly, we'd like to reach the 30% target by 2030 and 100% by 2040. So that's what we're aiming for.
Jazik.
Could you also then describe to us what you see in terms of the effect on the environment, in terms of the actual emissions? I mean, obviously, this is part of our fight against climate change. And again, do you have some idea of what the impact actually will be with this increase in sales?
Minister.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And these vehicles are going to play a significant role in helping Canada reach its targets, as light-duty vehicles currently account for, as I said, 50% of Canada's transportation emissions. Transport Canada estimates that the average new ZEV can save 3.4 tons of emission each year when compared to the average new internal combustion vehicle. And I will add the caveat that the recharging of those vehicles obviously should be coming from a clean source of electrical energy. That's also a requirement. And overall, from a government point of view, we're moving towards electrical energy that is clean energy.
Ms. Jazik.
Yes, Minister. You mentioned charging stations, and as someone pretty new around here since 2019, I'm still a little confused as to exactly who does what. So in terms of that type of infrastructure, what is the role of the Ministry of Transport as it relates to providing assurance that there are sufficient charging stations?
Minister.
So that's a very good question. It can sometimes be confusing. What department is responsible for what? Well, the building of charging stations is actually coming under Natural Resources Canada, Minister O'Regan, and he has the funding to build charging stations, to build a network across the country, and we've put a significant amount of money into it. I will also add, to give them their credit, that some provinces are also investing. My own province of Quebec, for example, has spent money to build up the charging network in the province of Quebec. And it also has incentives for the purchase, as does BC. So, it's a team effort here. And the more we get involved with this, the better we have chances of meeting our climate change goals and our ZEV targets.
Ms. Jazik.
One of the questions I think a number of people have is that as we have more zero emission vehicles out there, what is the potential for used vehicles? Is there any potential for resale incentives of these particular vehicles?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question. It is something we are looking at now that the base is beginning to grow. At the moment, it's roughly 3% of light-duty vehicles in the country are ZEVs, and as time goes on, there will be that market for used vehicles. So we are looking at that. We haven't reached any decisions with respect to used ZEVs, but it's potentially an area that we might address.
Ms. Jazik.
Are there any other areas, particularly in the as you're looking at zero emission vehicles, that are part of the program that you would like to elaborate on?
Minister?
Well, 30% roughly of transport-related greenhouse gases come from heavy and medium-duty vehicles. In other words, light and heavy trucks. And that is going to grow because we're the second largest country on Earth, and a lot of merchandise moves by truck. There is potential in the early years for us to move towards zero-emission vehicles in the light light and medium sort of truck sphere, and also for trucks that do short distances. They work within cities, that kind of vehicle. And there are, in fact, companies in Canada now that are focused on zero-emission medium-sized trucks. So there's a very promising future there, and that is an area that we're going to hopefully put more and more emphasis on in the coming years.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Mr. Barcelona-Vale.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for being with us today. We miss you at the committee. We'd like to see you more often. I'm going to begin by asking questions on air transportation. As you know, the air sector has gone through a crisis, and unfortunately, we have the impression that nothing is being done on your side. For 9 months, we've seen a crisis in the air travel sector. For 9 months, people have been distressed, calling us, saying we're losing our jobs. People are asking for government assistance, and elsewhere on the planet, the air sector has been helped. Here, we think that the minister is not doing anything. There are consultations, and we're waiting. So we hear that there might be eventually an assistance plan. Can we have a guarantee that this will happen, and when? Thank you for the question. Here's for a bit of context. When the pandemic began, all the government's efforts were concentrated on the citizens, to help the citizens of the country. There was a need to help Canadians. And honestly, we didn't know what would be the scope of this pandemic, how long it would last, and what effects it would have on sectors such as the air travel sector. In the months after the beginning of the pandemic, we now have a better idea of the situation with regards to the air sector, either air carriers, small and large, airports, small and large, an organization such as NAVCAN, or the aerospace industry that also depends or provides, is part of the supply chain for the air sector. And that is why, as I've mentioned as many times in responding to your questions, that we are working on a complete plan to help this sector. Thank you. But I'm trying to understand. You're saying that you didn't imagine what would happen, but other countries acted, and there was action, there was assistance for this sector. Why are the only ones to not help the air sector? Well, we're doing our analysis here in Canada to look at the measures that will be implemented. And I can assure you that we're in discussion with all the organizations involved, not only those working in the sector, but also unions, mayors of the cities that are affected because their small airport has lost its service. And so we are looking at this, and I am not not doing anything. We are working extremely hard to help the air sector. Well, I'm pleased to see that a plan is going to come, but I hope that we'll see a plan very, very soon. And I would like to have a guarantee that in the plan, we will take into account these thousands of people who want to be reimbursed for their air tickets. And all these people, it's millions of dollars in the air. They want to be reimbursed, not where they're going to pass away or when their children will finally grow up. Well, I do agree with you. There are, we're talking about billions of dollars, and there are many issues within the air sector. This is an extremely difficult situation. I understand that people want to be reimbursed. At the same time, reimbursements would put some airlines in extremely dire straits. So we're looking at the issue, and it's part of our very complete study that's underway to have measures that will eventually be announced. Don't you think that air companies should follow the act? The dilemma is one that you're going to understand, Mr. Barcelo-Duval. In some cases, some airlines are so close to bankruptcy that they would not be able to reimburse clients. So it's a very difficult situation. It's difficult for the company. I think you agree with me. We want to have an air travel sector that will be able to be healthy or relaunch after the pandemic. It's a very difficult situation. You're saying that you don't really want the companies to follow the law. Let's talk about regional air travel. Throughout Quebec, airports are in trouble. Transportation services as well. We have a working group that was implemented in Quebec. Could we have a reassurance from you that you are going to respect the conclusions that will be made by this working group for Quebec? 2, I'd like to know, why did you refuse to meet the UMQ crisis group? I'm discussing with my counterpart in Quebec, the transportation minister, and Minister Joly also is responsible for regional development. And she is also involved in working with Minister Fitzgibbon in Quebec. Discussions are underway, and we do understand the scope of the challenge. And that is why we announced in our speech from the throne, and we did state that we recognize the importance of this sector, that it was a priority for us to maintain regional service. So that can give you a little bit of comfort to know that it was in the speech from the throne. It's a promise that will be kept. Well, I'm pleased to see that it's in the speech from the throne, but I want to have a reassurance that you're going to respect what's going to be decided in Quebec. Well, we're working together as we work on all types of issues with the province of Quebec, and we have a wonderful working relationship, as you know. Thank you for your answers. Now, with regards to airline tickets, there doesn't seem to be much hope. So what I've noted also is that some people who are dealing with complaints, and the person in charge of complaints was excluded from the bar. So how do you choose the people that are nominated? You have somebody's spouse who is the minister for the airlines. I'm sorry, I'm not going to comment on the people that are actually working at the Transportation Office of Canada. As you know, this is an independent quasi-judicial organization. This organization makes its own decisions. I can assure you that in the selection of people that sit at the agency, that sit of the Office of Transportation of Canada, we vet people before they are nominated. So you're comfortable in appointing minister spouses?
Well, I'm now going to move on to Mr. Bachrach for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for joining us today, Minister. Minister, across Canada and in the part of the world that I represent in Northwest BC, hundreds and thousands of men and women every day climb into locomotives and operate trains that are kilometers long, that carry thousands of tons of goods, some of them dangerous goods. And they do that with the expectation that their employer and their government is protecting their safety. And as you know, in February of last year, Daniel Waldenberger-Bulmer, Andrew Dockrell, and Dylan Paratus tragically lost their lives in British Columbia after the train they were operating derailed. And it derailed despite concerns and warnings that the train was not safe to operate. The families of these workers want a criminal investigation to take place. And I would like to know what you say to those families who are asking for you to call on the RCMP to conduct a criminal investigation. Minister.
Thank you for the question. And first of all, I address my condolences to the families of the 3 CP employees who tragically lost their life in the BC, Field BC tragic incident. I do not have the authority to tell the RCMP to investigate. They make their own decisions with respect to these matters. I will tell you that very shortly after this incident, I put out a ministerial order with respect to procedures that would have to be adopted when a long train, had to make an emergency stop on a mountain grade 1.8 degrees or steeper, so that we could ensure that handbrakes would be put on so that we could prevent this kind of incident in the future. And that has since become a permanent measure. In addition, when a train must stop on an emergency, what's called an emergency stop, they have to Transport Canada that has happened. So these are new safety measures in the follow-up to this tragic incident.
Mr. Bachrach.
Minister, on that, with regard to that same incident, according to the CBC, the investigation of the CP derailment has been riddled with irregularities. The Transportation Safety Board's lead investigator was removed from his post after recommending a criminal probe by the RCMP. And the CP's internal police service shut down its investigation prematurely, prompting their lead constable to resign in frustration. I'm wondering if you can comment on the accountability here. Do you personally feel that there has been accountability in this specific case? And do you feel that the families of the 3 men who were killed have received the answers that they deserve?
I will tell you, Mr. Bachrach, that the Transportation Safety Board is an independent board that it does its own inquiries when this kind of incident occurs, and they are in the middle of it. They have not rendered their final report, and we must respect their arm's length authority to independently investigate without Transport Canada being involved at all, because sometimes they will have recommendations for Transport Canada after they have completed their inquiries. We also do not oversee CP Police, which come under the Canadian Pacific Company. And finally, I will say the Transport Canada did perform an occupational health and safety investigation on behalf of Labour Canada as a result of this tragedy, and we have given our report to CP. And so that part has been completed by Transport Canada.
Just very briefly, Mr. Minister, do you feel that a criminal probe is warranted, given what you know about this incident?
I believe that the Transportation Safety Board will tell us what actually happened. That is what I am focused on now, and to see whether there are things we can do, both the railways and Transport Canada, to make the system safer.
Mr. Bachrach.
Mr. Minister, shifting to a different subject, the NDP has sent your government a series of recommendations with regard to any sectoral support for the airline industry, and a few of the points covered in those recommendations. First of all, that airline companies respect their workers' rights and that financial support should not be used to compensate CEOs, executives, and shareholders, but rather to protect the jobs of the workers that work for those companies. Secondly, that the government take equity positions in airlines to ensure that the public's interest is protected through public ownership. And thirdly, and very importantly, that passengers be refunded for tickets they purchased that were canceled due to COVID. I think everyone agrees that when you buy something and you don't receive what you bought, you should get a refund. It's pretty simple. I'm wondering, do you agree with these principles, and will you commit to making any sectoral support for the airline sector reflect these principles that I've listed?
Minister.
What I will say, Mr. Bachrach, is that I appreciate the input that you and your party provided. We went out and consulted and received input from all parties, sometimes from individuals. We also received them from the Senate as well. So we very much appreciate it. And of course, this is part of the whole process of deciding how are we going to proceed now that we've had the benefit of lots of recommendations and suggestions. I can tell you that with respect to workers, I have met with QP and I've met with Unifor. I'm very much aware of their requirements as well. So it is something that we are wanting to ensure that when we come up with a final set of measures, we have taken into consideration all of the important input provided to us.
Minister,
thank you, Mr. Bachrach.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're sorry about that. We are going to be going on to the second round right now, and we're going to start off for 5 minutes. Mr. Cram, floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Minister, for appearing before the committee today. When it comes to air travel, I think it's important to distinguish between airlines and airports. That's because all of the help in the world for Canada's airlines won't do much good if they don't have any place to land or take off from. So I'm wondering if the Minister can tell the committee, is the government planning to do anything in particular for Canada's airports? Or is the plan to just let the smaller regional airports go bankrupt over the coming weeks and months?
Minister?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Cram. We're very much aware of the fact that the airports have been heavily impacted, because if you don't have passengers flying on airplanes, you don't have passengers in airports. So we're very conscious of that. We did provide a rent-free subsidy to 21 of the largest airports when this pandemic occurred last March for the whole of 2020. But we also realize that it's not just the big airports that have the largest volumes, but also small airports that have to be able to stay open if we're going to be able to fulfill our responsibilities in terms of regional routes. So yes, they are part of what we are looking at.
Mr. Cram?
Thank you. And on what date can we expect the government to release its plan to save Canada's airports?
Minister?
Well, I can't give you that date. All I can tell you is that we are working very hard on finalizing something, and as soon as you will know, going through the necessary processes that occur within a government, there are a certain number of steps that have to be followed, so I can't give you a precise date. But let me just say that it is something with which we are very seized.
Mr. Cram?
Okay, so I understand that you cannot give us a precise date. Will it be before Christmas?
As I say, I can't give you a precise date. Any minister or politician who is foolhardy enough to come out and give specific dates is usually going to turn out to be wrong. So what I'm trying to tell you is that we're doing it as quickly as possible.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, I have the floor again?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Cram, go ahead.
So other countries have released their plans to save their airports a long time ago. New Zealand announced their plan last March to help airports with their operating costs during the pandemic. The United States passed the CARES Act into law last March, which earmarked money specifically for airports. Today, the calendar says November, and the Canadian government still has not announced its plan to save our airports. So can you explain, why does it take the Canadian government 8 months and counting to do what the Americans and the New Zealanders did in 1 month?
Minister?
So to answer your question, you have to compare apples to apples. If you compare, for example, airports in Canada to airports in the United States, they operate differently. They receive funding from different sources. So it is important not to make direct comparisons between the two. As I said again, we are working very hard now that we have a good understanding of the impact on the air sector to come up with measures to address it. We did some things right from the beginning. For example, many airport employees were able to access the wage subsidy program. We're very proud of that. 21 airports were allowed to get a rent holiday for the year 2020. So we have put in place some measures, and in the case of northern airports serving remote areas, we have provided funding of $192 million to make sure that those 140 remote communities that are so important in the north of our country could still be able to rely on airlines, on air transport companies that could service them. So we have done some things as we moved along, but we're looking at the big picture now.
Mr. Graham?
Okay, thank you. And can you tell us if the plan to save the airline sector will include any help for rapid testing?
Minister?
Well, that's a parallel activity that we've been working on with the airlines and with the airports as well. We in Canada worked very constructively, in fact, with the airlines and the airports to put in place measures that would minimize the possibility of infection when somebody did go to an airport and took a flight to another destination. So lots of safety precautions have been put in place, the wearing of masks, taking temperature, asking certain questions, trying to minimize contact. The airports have done a great job cleaning and sanitizing their airports. The airlines themselves clean the aircraft after each flight. The air ventilation system on board these aircraft are extremely efficient at minimizing the possibility of transmission, but we also have the rules with respect to wearing masks. Now, your question is very important. If we can find a rapid test that's reliable and efficient, it will allow us the potential to reduce that 14-day quarantine that exists when somebody comes in from outside the country, and that would make a very big difference. So we're watching very carefully what's happening at Toronto Airport, also the pilot test that we are involved with, the Government of Alberta at Calgary Airport.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Cram. We'll now move on for 5 minutes to Mr. Rogers.
Good evening, Minister Garneau, and welcome to the Trans Committee. I've got a couple of questions for you, and we've gotten a lot of questions on the airline, so I'm going to focus on being from Newfoundland and Labrador, surrounded by water, and from Atlantic Canada. I'm going to focus on questions around the ferry service. First of all, I noticed in your the documents we received that your department allocated $2 million for a number of capital projects for Marine Atlantic, and which is greatly appreciated. However, there's a bigger ask for a new support building for the Port aux Basques, for the route between Port aux Basques and North Sydney in the town of Port aux Basques. And I'm just wondering if you could update us on the status of that plan and the request for funding approval to complete that project.
Minister?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rogers, for that question. First of all, MAI is a great organization. They have done really well in a very difficult pandemic, and even though the number of passengers has decreased, I tip my hat to them for maintaining this, as you know, constitutionally compulsory service between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador. With respect to your specific question, this is something that is something we're looking at extremely seriously, and we are now currently waiting for MAI to submit in the coming weeks its corporate plan with details with respect to this building that you have described. And we are certainly aware of the need for that, and we're going to look at it very seriously.
Mr. Rogers?
Thanks. Thanks, Minister. Yeah, and you're correct in saying it's a badly needed building, and I know Minister, our MPs have been lobbying for that particular piece of infrastructure. Also, in Budget 2019, your department and our government provided multi-year funding to support the modernization of its ferry fleet through the procurement of a new ferry. What is the appropriate approximate timeline for a new ferry that will sail between Port aux Basques and North Sydney? When do we expect to be able to see a new boat sailing on that route?
Minister?
Thank you for the question. I'm looking around, to see if anybody has that specific date. A new ferry to service Port aux Basques, the replacement. Do we have an answer on that? Yes. Just tell me. I'll relay this to you in a second,
sure.
Very quickly.
Okay, Mr. Rogers, if you want to go back and for another question, and the minister can get back to that in a second.
Write it.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
As well, Minister, I'd like to just make a note of the fact that I know we've seen here, staying with the ferry theme, that I wonder if you could comment on the ferry system, the MV Madeleine ferry, which is the one course between Quebec and PEI, and how does that fit into a longer-term ferry strategy?
Minister?
Well, thank you for the question. The Madeleine, which currently services between the Magdalen Islands and PEI, is 39 years old. And although we have already made the decision to have a new one built, in fact, by Davy Shipbuilding, along with another ferry called to replace the Holiday Island, which goes between Nova Scotia and PEI, those ferries will not be ready until 2026, 2027. So in the interim, now that the Madeleine has really begun to degrade very seriously after 39 years, we made the decision to purchase on an interim basis a modern, available, used ferry, which is from Spain, and it will come into service next year to take over from the Madeleine to ensure that the people that are living in the Magdalen Islands, 13,000 of them, will continue to have access to the mainland. So with respect to your question on MAI, the procurement process is underway with MAI. So we think that probably delivery will be in a couple of years.
Thank you, Minister. A quick question, Mr. Rogers.
No, in fact, they were the key questions for now, and I thank the Minister for his time and his direct answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. We're now going to go on to Mr. Barcelo-Duval. 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I want to come back to air travel and regional air travel more specifically. There's been a 30% increase of tariffs imposed by NAV Canada to all these transporters despite a crisis. I find that astounding, and we've learned that NAV Canada, before imposing this 30% increase, asked your office for assistance and that you said no. Now, NAV Canada, in addition to this 30% increase in tariffs which was already incredible, are looking to cut services. On the list, we have Blanc-Sablon, Natashquan, Sept-Îles in Quebec, and also in PDP, Témiscamingue, Rouyn-Noranda. For years, they've been fighting to have an acceptable service from NAV Canada. First of all, can you guarantee that there will be no service cuts, extra service cuts for regions in Quebec? And secondly, that you're going to make sure that tariff increases will stop. This is the worst possible time to increase tariffs. Companies are already hurting. Thank you. NAV Canada is the air controller, and it's an arm's length independent organization. And because there are no planes in the sky, they're losing about 80% of their revenues. The situation is slightly improving, but as with all organizations, they have debts that need to be paid. So they've had no other choice other than to increase the tariffs. And these tariffs, as you mentioned, are 29%. This is once again an indication of the difficulties in the air sector. In some cases, they're cutting because there's no service or almost no service. So they look at the hours where service is provided, but I can assure you that this goes through Transport Canada. And we are not going to compromise the safety. We're not going to compromise safety's decision, any type of safety. Yes, but regional air travel is essential. It's essential for economic development in these regions. We can't say we're going to close the airports in all regions of Quebec. That's unthinkable, and I hope you're going to understand this. My last question. I tabled C-249 so that passengers be refunded for airline tickets where there was no service. Could I please be supported in my tabling of this bill? Sorry.
Votre premier commentaire.
As to your first comment on the importance of regional air service, we are on the same wavelength, Mr. Barcelo-Duval. Once again, and I told you, this is in the speech from the throne. It is a priority. It's important for us in Canada to treat all citizens, those who live in regions or urban centers, the same way, with access to similar services. So this is a priority for us. Once again, with regards to the issue of airline ticket reimbursements, we are aware of the situation, and we are looking at this in the context of a larger plan that we are crafting at this moment.
Mr. Bachrach for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Minister, as you're aware, there's class action lawsuits in the United States against Canadian Airlines for failing to refund American passengers. And those American passengers are leaning on a Department of Transportation notice from April that basically laid out the obligation of airlines to provide refunds, even in cases where the flight disruptions are outside the carrier's control. A very different message from the statement on vouchers that came from the CTA. I'm just wondering if you can comment on what it tells you that foreign passengers appear to be better able to assert their consumer rights than Canadians are.
What I will say, Mr. Bachrach, is that when we put together the passenger protection rights that came out about a year ago, and I was very proud of them, I'm afraid we did not anticipate there would be a pandemic, that there would not be that situation where the airlines have to stop flying for reasons beyond their own control. Now, without getting too technical, when you buy a ticket, you also have to remember that there's a tariff associated with it. That's the small print, the contractual contract between you and the airline. And very few people read these, but it's important to know that they have language with respect to certain conditions. And it is something that has resulted in some people feeling.
I'm familiar
that,
with the argument, Mr. Minister.
Okay,
I believe
right.
you shared that with us last time we asked about this.
All right. So I'll just say that, yes, there are class action suits against the airline, and I'm not going to comment on how the airlines will deal with those.
Thank you, Mr. Bachrach.
Just moving on very briefly to the issue of passenger complaints to the CTA. I'm wondering, Minister, if you could share with us how many complaints have been received by the CTA since the pandemic began? Ballpark.
Minister?
Ballpark, I would think it's about 10,000.
Okay.
And if you have questions about it, you can, of course, speak to the CTA.
Okay, I'm wondering if you know how many of those 10,000 have been investigated by the CTA.
Again, I would ask you to refer that question to the CTA. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. We're now going to move on to Ms. Kusi for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you so much to the Minister for being here today. So Minister, I'm just going to go back to one of the questions of my colleagues on this committee, and that's just as to the timing of the plan, which I'm a little bit confused by, because in the media today, it was actually Reuters, my apology from before for not clarifying the right media house, but it was Reuters. They did indicate that this is impending. This will arrive within days, which gave me, as well as I'm sure many other airline sector employees, incredible hope. But what I'm hearing from you now is that you're not certain, or you're not willing to provide information as to when this will be. And as my colleague, Mr. Cram, did refer to, he said, you know, will we see this by the holidays? And you yourself had said you have talked to many stakeholders. I have also talked to many stakeholders within the airline sector over my time as Shadow Minister for Transport. And they are telling me, Minister, that if they are not up and running by the holiday season, and of course leading to spring break, this is the end of their corporation and perhaps the end of the airline sector. So I'm really looking to you for some type of assurance as to when we can see this support, because as I said, according to the media, this is any day now, and I was so happy to read that, and so happy for the dozens and dozens of airline employees who had been contacting me, and airline individuals. So can you please again just try and provide myself with some comfort, the sector with some comfort as to when we can expect to see this support, which again, I will remind you, we have been waiting 8 months for. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you for the question, and I'm aware of the article as well. I read it this afternoon, and far be it from me to cast any aspersions on the media, but I believe that they quote a number of unnamed sources. I have no idea who those sources are, and I think that it is probably worth being careful about interpreting some things in terms of things like when. I can't say any more than that, but I can assure you that I was not interviewed for that article.
Ms. Cusi?
Thank you, Minister. Well, you know what they say. If you read it on the internet, it's most certainly true. Minister, though, I'll return to two assurances that I asked for and unfortunately did not receive within my first round. And again, those are regarding the workers, the airline employees. Can you please commit that this sector support, when it is given, will assure that there are no further layoffs, that once this support has been given, that there will be no further layoffs? And secondly, as asked by myself, as asked by my colleagues, across several parties, if you can assure within this sector support, within this plan, that consumers, passengers will be reimbursed. Finally, I asked you in the first round, I was really hoping to get some assurance for both the employees of the airline sector that are clinging on to their jobs, hanging on to their jobs, hoping to ride out this difficult situation, as well as the many Canadians that are looking at their Visa cards, MasterCards with the $1,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 charges from long ago for these flights and need to be reimbursed. Are you able to provide any type of comfort or reassurance at this time regarding workers or passengers? Thank you, Minister.
Minister?
Well, Ms. Cusi, hats off for your persistence in asking the question. Unfortunately, as you know, I cannot give you specifics at this point, other than to tell you that I'm very, very aware of the 2 points that you raise, one with respect to the protection of workers and the other one with respect to passengers who would like to be reimbursed. And I can tell you as on the side that many of those passengers have written to me. So I'm extremely aware of the fact that they're not happy with the current situation. We are taking those things into consideration as we try to elaborate a program that will address the air sector.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Ms. Cusi. Mr. Sidhu, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be sharing my time with Mr. Alkari.
Okay.
Minister, thank you for being here today. As you know, I'm a big advocate for electric vehicles and charging infrastructure, and I appreciate the additional resources for the Incentives for Zero Emission Vehicles program. This program will provide the residents of Brampton East and my riding cleaner transportation solutions, reduce pollution, while helping to meet Canada's zero emissions vehicle sales targets. I want to talk about the air travel sector. I know the wage subsidy has helped many in the air travel sector keep their workers on the payroll during these challenging times. Speaking more about the air travel sector, can you comment on the importance of air travel for a large country like Canada, please?
Minister?
Yes, it would be my pleasure to speak about that because I feel very strongly about it. I believe that the air sector is extremely important to Canada, not only for the obvious reasons that people often bring up, that it allows us to, for business to travel, for tourists to reach destinations, for families to be reunited. Those are all the obvious points that are brought up. But let us remember that Canada is the second largest country on Earth. In some cases, there are no other practical options. I think the air sector, even though it is sometimes maligned, plays a critical role in terms of unifying us as a country because they allow us to see each other, to communicate with each other face to face. And that is something that we may have taken for granted, but is extremely important a little bit like the railway at the beginning of Canada as a young nation that suddenly allowed us to reach from one end of the country to the other end of the country. I think it's also important for sovereignty reasons as well. I would like to think that a Canadian could get on an airplane in Canada and pretty much reach almost any other part of the world instead of having to depend on having to go across the border to catch a flight or to go to another spot in Europe to take another flight to get on to their final destination. And, you know, I'm reminded of the tens of thousands of people that the airlines brought back to Canada at the beginning of this pandemic. And we brought them back because we had the ability to do it because we had airlines that could provide that. And finally, our airlines, and I want to talk and tip my hat off to the smaller airlines that serve the north, the regions of the country that have small communities, sometimes in very remote areas, that absolutely have no other alternative but to receive their support, whether it's medicines, whether it's a doctor coming in, whether it's food, or whether they need to be evacuated for hospital care in a larger center. There's no question the air sector in our country plays a critical role for this country.
Thank you for those
Thank you,
insights, Minister. Mr. El-Khoury.
Mr. El-Khoury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bienvenue, Monsieur le Ministre. C'est un plaisir de vous avoir.
Welcome, Mr. Minister. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. And I think that all Canadians appreciate the huge responsibility and the very heavy responsibility that rests on your shoulders. And I have had many conversations with you, and I appreciate very much that you listen to my concerns. And I want to make sure that we're guaranteeing the health and safety of citizens. And there's one thing that you also hold to heart. You're trying to do I know that you're trying to do everything possible to make sure that people working in the air travel sector are able to keep their jobs ultimately. We appreciate your work, Mr. Minister. Thank you very much. I do have a question for you, Mr. Minister. The Prime Minister promised $41 million in emergency assistance for northern airline carriers, and this was to maintain services to isolated communities. Could you please explain to us in further detail the importance of these types of funds and for this type of region? Thank you, Mr. Minister. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for your question, Mr. El-Khoury. As you know, the pandemic hit the airline sector very hard, including smaller carriers that serve the northern and isolated parts of the country. Without any passengers, they have no revenue, so they're not able to operate. We did recognize that it was absolutely essential that these small carriers continue to operate so that they would be able to provide services to transport cargo, medication, food, to bring in doctors in isolated regions, 140 regions specifically in northern parts of Canada. The government had to assist these small companies that help isolated regions, and so that they would continue to do that. We worked with the provinces and territories, and we share costs. This is shared costs between the federal government, provincial and territorial governments, so that they have enough revenue to be able to provide essential services. This is absolutely essential.
The 5 minutes has lapsed. Minister Garneau, thank you for your time here today, and thank you for taking on all these questions from everyone. I do understand that you have to depart the meeting right now, and we're going to move on to questions with your officials. So once again, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the members. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a 2-minute pause and get everybody ready here, primarily those on on board with respect to the officials. Mr. Clerk, have they all had sound checks?
Yes, everybody had the sound check, and I can advise you that the services can keep going a little bit further than originally planned.
All set.
Okay.
Mr. Keenan, due to COVID-19, Canadians have lost millions of dollars in canceled plane tickets. Airlines are currently providing vouchers for future travel, but vouchers don't put food on residents' tables. Many Canadians believe they should be reimbursed for their airfares. The CTA has yet to address many of the 10,000 complaints they received from Canadian consumers demanding reimbursements for flights canceled due to COVID-19 pandemic. What is your department's plan for addressing this issue of travel refunds, as vouchers are not sufficient?
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. And as we've seen over the previous hour with the questions and discussions with the Minister of Transport, I mean, this is an area of significant discussion, significant work in terms of one of the key issues in the air sector, and there's a significant impact on Canadians. I can't really say more than the fact. I'd say two things. The first is that in terms of the issues of whether under the current system whether passengers are entitled to refunds that they have not yet received, this is under the jurisdiction of the Canadian Transportation Agency. There have been a large number of complaints filed, and the CTA is looking at those, and any the fate of that will depend would have to be questions would have to be addressed to the CTA. In terms of the government's response to the crisis in the air sector, including the outstanding refunds, it's difficult to really add any more than what the minister said over the last hour.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Thank you. There's a situation was brought to my attention just last night that some of the smaller, more regional airports, their operating costs that are usually divvied up amongst many different commercial airlines, some of them are no longer flying out of those regional airports. The operating costs are still the same for those airports. They're now dividing those costs up amongst the smaller remaining users of the airport, such as charters or private planes, or even, quite frankly, some government aircraft. An example of that would be snow removal. The bills are getting quite significant to these smaller users. They're already suffering. A lot of these regional lines service the north and are much needed. What's being done to help some of these operating costs to help the airports absorb these and not just pass them on to the smaller airlines that are still trying to get by?
Mr. Keenan?
Mr. Chair, the member raises a really good question, and in the process of understanding the issues, the extreme impacts on the sector, and the process of advising the government on options in terms of addressing them, the department is in pretty well constant contact with a wide range of air operators, a wide range of airports, and we have seen exactly the dynamic the member's describing, where airlines are incurring large financial losses, extremely large financial losses. Airports are as well. Airports have to stay open, and they have fixed costs. The snow has to get removed, whether it's a full slate of flights or it's a very reduced one. And so we're very conscious of the impact on airports. We're working closely to understand them, to make sure that those harsh realities are reflected in the analysis and the discussions that is underway. It's hard to sort of say much more than that at this point, other than that the member is exactly right in terms of the very difficult dynamic a lot of small and regional airports are facing.
Okay, nice to hear you're at least aware of that, and I think that is definitely a very pressing issue that needs to be looked at quite quickly, because a lot of these airlines are servicing the north, and that's all they have left to get them their services. So thank you for bringing that to your attention. I'd like to move on to rapid testing now, Deputy Minister. Based on the Coutts land border crossing and the Calgary International Airport rapid testing pilot trials, when can we expect to see some results on this program?
Thank you for the question. Again, very, very important question, very important issue, and that increasingly you can see that in particularly in air travel. There's also the Coutts land travel, but in the air travel system, the world is edging its way towards some kind of system where testing it's sort of a part of international air travel. We're working closely with ICAO, and we anticipate seeing a bit of a blueprint come out of ICAO in the next few weeks. In Canada, there are 3 sets of pilots underway. I think one of the really interesting ones is the one the member referred to in Alberta at Calgary Airport and Coutts. Those pilots are going operational literally, I think, this week. I think they've been operational for like a few days. So we're watching them very closely. We're working very closely with the province of Alberta and the federal government, Transport Canada, the Public Health Agency of Canada, and Health Canada are working really closely. We're hopeful that we will see in those pilots some success factors that can be built on for a broader testing system that can eventually come into place in Canada. There's a second pilot that's happening in Toronto with Air Canada, Toronto Airport, and McMaster. It's a different kind of pilot, but it's creating a good baseline to understand of international arrivals, what the infection rates are. And there's a third pilot in Vancouver, which is actually on a pilot scale, looking at pre-departure testing. So passengers outward bound from Canada can head to an international destination with already having had a negative COVID test. So we're working very closely with our partners in monitoring these pilots, and we hope to learn from them to create options in terms of moving forward with operational testing at the border in the air mode, and our colleagues at CBSA are working closely to consider options in the land mode.
I see the chair's talking, but he's on mute. I don't know if he was telling me my time's over.
That I haven't done in a while. So, thank you, Mr. Keenan.
I should have just kept going.
Yeah, I should have.
Thank you. Thank you to the deputy for that.
Thank you, Ms. Jaczek.
Thank you, Chair. I have some fairly technical questions of our officials. Looking through the SUPS B, I was quite intrigued by a number of the items, and one in particular, funding to deliver better service to air travelers, $12 million. Now, quite honestly, I have to say I hate air travel, and anything that could possibly improve service is certainly music to my ears. So could you just explain, and I don't know who is the best person to do that, just what exactly this money is supposed to achieve?
Mr. Keenan?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. This relates to an initiative that we launched in budget in the 2019 budget, and we passed a bill. I'm trying to remember the name of the act, but I think this was for the this is for the P3. Oh, I have the wrong line item. I'm going to actually turn to the Assistant Deputy Minister, Ryan Pilgrim, our Chief Financial Officer, to speak to this. I think I was speaking to the wrong item.
Mr.
Go
Pilgrim?
ahead, Ryan.
Oh, hi there. Yes, this $12 million is for expense reimbursement agreement. So with the potential sale of CATSA to an independent party, the purchaser's approved diligence and negotiation expenses would be reimbursed up to agreed upon cap if the negotiations fail. So the thought was that the sale would go through this year, so this money was pulled in for that in case we had to reimburse the group that purchased the entity. So that's what it's for. It's a contingent liability.
Thank you, Mr. Pilgrim. Ms. Jazik?
And so that somehow is going to relate to better service to air travelers with the sale of CATSA, is that, or the transition of CATSA? Could you elaborate? I'm new to this,
Sure.
and
So
I don't understand.
Happily, and I apologize for the confusion on this. So in the 2019 budget, the government announced a plan to transition CATSA, the Air Travel Security Agency, from a Crown corporation into a non-for-profit corporation that would run essentially like a co-op, essentially replicating the model that we did for air navigation services quite some time ago, where it was a service function of air navigation that was essentially a part of Transport Canada. We transitioned it to a non-for-profit corporation that was fully focused on service, and has been able to generate essentially higher levels of service, better safety performance, and lower cost. And we were hoping to the plan is to drive a similar transition in the governance of CATSA to enable the organization to, we believe, work more closely with the airports and the airlines to provide better, faster service to travelers in terms of their security screening and that of their luggage. Now, this was launched back when one of the main challenges was ensuring you had an efficient service that could handle the ever-increasing volumes of passengers. It's still a reform that is sort of midstream, and that we're taking stock of how to proceed with this reform, given the just unprecedented, devastating impact we've seen on air travel.
Ms. Jazik?
Thank you. Well, that does help quite a bit. And actually, my other question did relate to CATSA. Some $41.5 million for explosives detection systems. I would have assumed that we already had some sort of explosives detection system. So again, could you just elaborate on what this expenditure was or is going to be used for?
Sure, and there's an element of the operations of CATSA. There's really sort of at its heart, it is a security operation which uses the best intelligence on security threats and the latest technology to protect passengers from mischief. And in the personal screening and in the hold baggage screening, there's always an evolution of the technology of going to more sophisticated X-ray machines, remote sensing, and we're working on the adoption of some newer technology that allows better remote sensing of explosives without actually by picking up without as much intrusion as you normally see, because you go through and then there's the swab of the bag. There's a way to start doing that in a more remote manner using the latest technology. So in CATSA, we're always going through every few years an investment in the next technology to better screen for things like explosives and weapons, and better protect passengers in a manner that's less intrusive as they go through the screening points.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Ms. Jazik. We're now going to move on to Mr. Barcelona-Deville. For 6 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan, you've surely received correspondence from air carriers, especially regional air carriers, complaining about a situation that has been in place since July the 1st, a new regulation that affects Twin Otter planes. And they're the main planes used to serve northern communities, brush planes, and they operate in less than ideal conditions, and there's a new regulation that began on July the 1st. Apparently, they can't use this plane anymore, and this is a plane for which there's no. It's manufactured here. It's been in use since the 60s. So before imposing this regulation, did you consult operators of regional airlines, especially in a COVID context, the fact that there's a crisis in this sector, to impose this regulation now? I'm asking why? How was this thought out?
And you raise a great point that we have a fundamental mission, and our number one objective and mission of Transport Canada is the safety of the traveling public. And there's always a number of issues that we're working through, a number of standards we're improving, and regulations that we're modernizing. And that we're looking very carefully at how we carry out that number one priority in the context of the deep disruption of COVID. So on some basic level, we have extended deadlines for the renewal of pilots' licenses, et cetera. When it comes to addressing pressing safety concerns with equipment, we have to continue to pursue the changes to airworthiness directives and the corrective actions. We have tried our best to make adjustments to reflect the disruption, and we've changed some timelines and a number of safety initiatives to, without sacrificing safety, allow for the disruption that operators are facing. When we make changes to a requirement, for example, for the training of pilots, for equipment on planes, we do consult with both the manufacturers and the operators, because the operators have to put in place the changes. So
I'm pleased to see that you consulted, but I imagine that they did not agree, because if they're talking about this to me, it's because they don't agree. If this is the main plane that has been used by small companies that have to serve a region and they can no longer use their planes, there seems to be a huge issue. How many accidents have happened with these types of planes? Why do you have this regulation? On what data did you base this decision before imposing this regulation?
It's a great question, because we're very conscious that in remote communities, particularly those that have no other source of no other transportation links, the small regional operators and planes like the Twin Otter are absolutely they're the backbone of all of the essential supply, and so we do work through, and we do seek to find a way to address the safety concerns in a manner that does not disrupt operations. And we can often find solutions. Sometimes the operators are not always happy with the results of our safety officials, but we do try to be conscious of operational implications and give enough time and enough notice and for the operators to come into compliance, so we do not disrupt essential transportation routes.
So I would invite you to continue and to try to find solutions with them. It would be great to continue to use these planes to help them financially. But to impose this, well, already it's extremely costly in remote areas, so I find that it's a bad idea. Now, with regards to new regulation on pilot fatigue, I'm told that this will require having more pilots aboard planes in northern communities. There's a shortage of housing right now, and during COVID-19, it's also mentioned that this increases risk of exposure because there are more people in the planes, and we know that two pilots in a 9-passenger plane, it's more people. So have you considered these elements that were mentioned by the airlines, especially with regards for smaller regional airlines?
Mr. Chair, the member raises another very good question, and this is a great example of a significant number of operational problems that we've seen air operators run into as a result of the COVID disruptions, and they're particularly acute, as the member has indicated, by the small airlines going into remote communities. What I can say is that we have the safety officials and the Transport Canada Civil Aviation are maintaining an ongoing dialogue with air operators, including the northern air operators, the small regional operators, to identify the challenges that they're facing as a result of COVID. And we are doing our best, and we are offering flexibility on a number of the requirements under civil aviation safety requirements, and wherever we can provide flexibility that we believe does not sacrifice public safety, our officials are trying to do that. So I can commit to take these two issues back and just see where we're at with our safety officials. However, I never direct safety officials; they have to come to a conclusion themselves. But I think we will. I'll see what other room there is to offer flexibility on these operational issues without actually, as long as it does not sacrifice public safety.
Thank you. I know that time is short. I have one last question with regards to the sale of Air Transat. I know that on your office at Transport Canada for several months now, you have a report from Transport Canada on the sale of Air Transat. Where are you now in this analysis? Are you have any concerns on the effects on competition? And have you received the request of the committee to obtain the documents? And can we count on you to have these documents on time?
Hold off that question, Mr. Keenan. If you can get that answer into another question, that would be wonderful. Mr. Bachrach,
Sure.
You have the floor for 5 or 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps my questions are for Mr. Keenan, but I suppose whoever is best equipped to answer them can jump in. I wanted to start where I left off with the Minister talking a little bit about the CTA, the Canadian Transportation Association, and the complaints that it's received, agency rather, and the complaints that it's received. We all know that there's a huge backlog of complaints, and we heard from the Minister that at least 10,000 additional complaints have been received since the beginning of the pandemic. I'm wondering if Mr. Keenan can speak to how many of those 10,000 have been investigated, or whether, given the backlog, the CTA simply hasn't been able to get to the pandemic-related complaints.
Thank you for the question. That question would have to be put to the CTA. It's a quasi-judicial entity that operates arm's length from Transport Canada.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Maybe I'll try this tack. In the main estimates, the funding for the CTA is included. And by our read, it looks like there's a reduction of about $2 million for dispute resolution based on what was spent last year. And it seems like, given the backlog of complaints, given the massive number of complaints related to the pandemic, this would be an agency that should be receiving more money, not less. Can you speak to why that seems to be the case in the estimates, why the CTA isn't getting an increase in funding in order to deal with the backlog that they're seeing?
It's an absolutely fair question, and I think to get a complete picture of the CTA's resources to deal with all its operations, including the uptick in complaints from passengers, you have to look not just at the main estimates, but also at Subs-B. And you will find that in Subs-B there is an item to add just over $11 million to the funding of the CTA, specifically to give it a significant boost in resources to address the significant uptick in air passenger complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Moving on, many of my colleagues have mentioned the situation facing smaller regional airports, and that's certainly an issue of great concern in Northwest BC. I've been speaking with different airport operators and with local governments, and one of the concerns is around the ACAP program, the Airports Capital Assistance Program, and I noted in the main estimates that the funding seems to have remained fixed at about $38 million, and it's been at that level since 2000. This is a program that local governments that run airports and other airport authorities really depend on to purchase expensive capital equipment and make other capital upgrades that wouldn't otherwise be affordable. Wondering if you can comment on the need for an increase to the ACAP program. This is something that I wrote to the minister about recently, specifically with regard to the Bella Bella and Bella Coola airports, which need upgrades to their lighting so that medevac flights can land there during the pandemic. Of course, this is an issue of utmost concern. Is your department considering increasing the ACAP program?
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with the minister's characterization. We see ACAP as a really important program that helps those smaller airports meet the safety requirements. It's a heavily subscribed program. It's been at $38 million dollars a year for a number of years, and we spend just about every penny. We may reprofile it, but it's a fully subscribed. I would say that the ability of airports to finance safety issues is the safety investments and spending, given the downturn in the revenues, is one of the many issues that we're looking at and analyzing very carefully in the context of the economic crisis in the air sector.
Mr. Bachrach.
Continuing on the situation facing regional airports, I'm wondering, Mr. Keenan, I know that the minister alluded to the fact that there's going to be a plan that becomes evident over the next rise and that we should hang on and wait for those details. But I'm just wondering if you can speak to some of the strategies your department is considering in order to provide those smaller regional airports with the support needed to keep them viable, keep them financially sustainable, and to keep that air transportation into smaller communities through the pandemic. Could you just speak in broad terms to the types of strategies that the department's considering?
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chair, what I can say on that is that we're working very hard and very diligently analyzing all of the stress points, the many stress points in the system, and we're consulting very closely with the operators in the system, and we're doing it in a way where we're making sure we're differentiating between the large airlines and the large airports, the small airlines, the small airports, and the remote regional communities that rely heavily, that rely some of them exclusively on the air mode as their link to the rest of the country. And so we're making sure that diversity in the system and the fact that there are extreme stresses playing out in different ways across the different parts of the system is fully understood.
Mr. Bachrach.
Okay, my last question is with regard to emissions and greenhouse gases from the transportation sector. And I noted the minister earlier was talking about the different strategies to reduce those emissions. And I note in the departmental plan that there's measurements provided for 2016 through 2018 that show that emissions from the transport sector have been stagnant. They've been roughly 7.5% over 2005 levels, when your department has a goal to cut them by 30% of 2005 levels by 2030. Are the strategies the department is employing to reduce emissions, are they up to that task? Do we have effective enough strategies, and is there a plan to meet and exceed that 2030 target yet?
Mr. Keenan, quick answer.
Great question. Minister Garneau says many times that transport is a quarter of all emissions, second largest source of emissions in Canada, and he is working diligently with his colleagues in developing options and plans for additional actions to actually reduce emissions in the transport sector. Mr. Chair, if you'll permit me, I feel I gave long answers that didn't, and I left two questions unanswered from the previous member, which I could answer quickly. You directed me to squeeze that in at some point.
Go ahead, squeeze it in.
The first answer to the question is that Transport Canada is working diligently on the application for the merger between Transat and Air Canada. The parties filed their latest undertakings with us a little over 2 weeks ago, and we're working through that. And the department has received the motion from the committee for the production of papers related to the merger, and we're working diligently preparing to respond to that request, and we will ensure that we do so within the time allocated by the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. That was including Mr. Barcelou-Duval's question?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mr. Keenan. I appreciate that. We're now going to go on to the second round, which is going to start off with Mr. Soroka with 5 minutes. Mr. Soroka, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you, Mr. Keenan, for appearing today. After reviewing the estimates, there was a few things that stuck out in my mind regarding some sums of money here. In Table 197, there was the sum going to the Asian Pacific Gateway and Corridor Transportation Infrastructure Fund. The stated purpose of this fund, and I quote, to provide funding for strategic infrastructure projects in BC, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba that enhance the competitiveness, efficiency, and capacity of Canada's multi-modal transport network focused on international commerce with the Asian Pacific region. Now, I know you're aware of the Alberta to Alaska corridor. I'm just wondering, has there been discussion at the department, or what kind of potentials there is for this being put through?
Thank you for the question. That item on the Asia Pacific Gateway and Corridor Fund is a reprofiling of some final monies under an infrastructure fund that started quite some time ago in budget 2006 under a previous government. And the nature of the infrastructure projects is that you allocate all the money and the final payments tend to come sometimes years later on some of the larger projects. So the government, that project is really just finishing paying off on projects that were decided many years ago. There's no new intake under that project. The National Trade Corridors Fund, which was launched by Minister Garneau a little over 2 years ago, has moved quickly and approved over 85 projects. I think we put out about $1.8 billion, leveraging almost $4 billion in strategic infrastructure projects. That program is now fully subscribed. There is a northern component that we've just opened up, and we're open to submissions on that. And essentially, if we get submissions for northern transportation projects, we assess them on a merit basis and go from there.
Okay, so once the project is submitted, then there's potential for this, or do you see any benefits of that Alberta to Alaska corridor being put through?
Well, the Alaska to, I'd actually have to check to see. I know the project you're speaking about, and I'm not sure if because it's Alaska to Alberta, I'm not sure if it would qualify under the Northern program or not. It would certainly qualify under the general program, but again, it would be subject to a proposal and a merit-based assessment. The challenge with the general program is the government has fully allocated the initial funding on that program, and so there's a tiny amount left, and I know the amount left would not be enough to build a railway.
I know it's not enough to build a railway. I'm just wondering your viewpoint. If there was political will from the Americans and Canadians, is that a good potential to go forward, and would it save money in the long run?
It's difficult for us to sort of opine on a project until we actually get a detailed submission and then assess it against the merit criteria.
So then any of the northern projects, that's only anything within Canada, and that's only going to coastal waters, or how is that allocated then? Is that air, ship, and rail?
The northern program. There's a $400 million dedicated northern program for projects that are north of 60. With a carve out for Churchill, Manitoba. And so it kind of dips down north of 60 for Churchill. So there's a geographic restriction to it, and it would cover, in principle, it's open to any project that improves transportation and trade gateways and reduces bottlenecks.
Okay, now again on that table 197 under the estimates, there was a grant for $500,000 is allocated to the National Trade Corridor Fund, and under the contributions of the $450 million. So you're saying most of that money is already spent and just being paid back now, or is there some new money that for some other projects that I'm not aware of?
So I think the monies you're referring to, and I'll invite my ADM of corporate to correct me if I'm wrong, is what we call a reprofiling, where it's in supplementary estimates B, because we shifted the allocation of money from one fiscal year to a next. So there is a significant amount of money under the National Trade Corridors Fund that's not yet spent, but we received a tremendous number of high quality proposals. We put them through a merit-based assessment criteria, and the government decided and announced about over 85 of them. Those 85 projects essentially, and we've committed the money to them. And if the proponents do build them, sometimes a project will go astray for any number of reasons. But if the proponents do build them, then we will have spent virtually the entire 1.8 billion. So it continues to show up in our reference levels until we get the bills, the construction bills in, and we pay them. But we don't actually have enough we don't have enough unencumbered funds to take on any major new projects at this time, unless the government were to decide to add financial resources to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Thank you, Mr. Soroka. We'll now move on for 5 minutes with Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to Mr. Keenan and the other officials. Before I get to the questions, I want to go back to regards to Marine Atlantic. I'd just like to say that I've also met with numerous people in the airlines industry, CEOs of airports, people who own airlines, and people who have a keen interest, of obviously an invested interest. And one of the things that they keep telling me and saying about getting people back in the aircraft is we should have rapid testing. Rapid testing, they believe, will put people back in the aircraft and have them flying, particularly in the domestic market. Mr. Keenan, for you and other officials, thanks for being here today. And I just have a couple of questions around the impact of the current pandemic on service provided by Marine Atlantic, both the mandated constitutional one between Port-aux-Basques and North Sydney, and the non-mandated one, which is between Nova Scotia, of course, North Sydney to Argentia. So has the pandemic had any influence on the funding requested in the main and the supplementary estimates that we see in front of us?
Mr. Chair, yes, it has. I think there's an item in the supplementary estimates for Marine Atlantic that actually has to do with costs and revenues, I believe. Is that not the case, Melanie? Under supplementary estimates B, and I'm just trying to find the amount here, but do you have the amount there, Ryan? The Marine Atlantic? Go off mute and answer.
Yes, there's $2 million in the supplementary estimates B. It's a reprofile of capital. But there was also in supplementary estimates A, $84.9 million provided to Marine Atlantic for capital and additional operating dollars. So between the two, it's $86.9 million extra dollars provided to Marine Atlantic this year in the supplementary estimates, in addition to the $55.7 million provided in the main estimates.
Mr. Rogers?
And just to follow up to that, I guess, is what are the anticipated financial impacts of the pandemic and reduced services on the viability of Marine Atlantic?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think the pandemic has hit almost every transportation provider. Airlines, it hit them severely. Transit, intercity busing, intercity rail, and ferry services. And so we see all of the ferry operators in Canada having taken an operational and financial hit. So we first worked with them to ensure that we had the provisions for safe operation, and that as Marine Atlantic is a Crown Corporation of Transport portfolio, we're working closely with them to assess the financial impact going forward. I would say, I think our view is that the continued operation of Marine Atlantic in general, and the constitutional service in particular, is non-negotiable. And so we're simply working through the financial implications and finding a way with Marine Atlantic to manage them. As the minister indicated, it's our assessment that Marine Atlantic's done a really great job, both in terms of managing dealing with the COVID safety for their passengers and their clients, and also just adjusting their operations to the disruption and work and manage their way through. And so we'll just keep working with them on that and make sure the service continues.
Mr. Rogers.
I can say I experienced firsthand the tremendous service that was being provided by the employees of Marine Atlantic. They were very comforting and reassuring and treated us very well. And it was a very positive experience with the restrictions that they're dealing with. The one final question I've got here is, I asked the minister about the building for Port aux Basques, and he referenced the Marine Atlantic corporate plan. I was just wondering when we might be able to see some kind of response to that corporate plan, sometime soon, or what do you think?
Melanie, what do you think? I turned Melanie, when do we think the Marine Atlantic corporate plan would likely go through? Do we have a sense?
Assuming I'm off mute, our objective would be in the coming months, as soon as possible. We've received excellent information from Marine Atlantic, and we're working it through the system.
Thank you, Ms. Todd. Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Mr. Rogers. We're now going to move on.
Mr. Chair. Yep.
We're now going to move on to Mr. Barcelou-Duval for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recently saw in the media information saying that at the request of people in Natashquan, that DFO would acquire the wharf that is now owned by Transport Canada. Is there a will for this? The fishers in Natashquan are very concerned. They're afraid to not be able to go out and fish. So could I have an answer? And also, where are we with negotiations?
I'm going to turn it over to the colleague, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Programs, to answer that. Go ahead, Anu.
Okay, what we are aware that Department of Fisheries and Oceans is interested in acquiring the Natashquan wharf, and we are working with them. There are a number of steps that we have to take in terms of ensuring that the wharf can be transferred, and including environmental remediations if necessary, and just a whole bunch of internal steps. So as we go through them and as there's interest to move this forward, we will proceed.
Yes, but can we expect? Do you have a deadline? Do you have an idea of a timeline?
Timeline. It's just in very initial discussions with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
Yes, but you understand that for the fishers, this is a question of life or death. If they don't have a wharf, if they can't fish, there's no work, and the village is shut down.
I think that's a fair point, and when we look at these kind of issues, we consult very carefully and closely with affected parties, and we'll work closely with the community and DFO in looking at this issue.
My next question for you, Mr. Keenan, are you satisfied? I know that over 10,000 complaints were made with regards to non-refunded airline tickets by air carriers. None of them were treated by your organization?
Simply come back to the points the minister raised. This is a very sensitive issue. It's a very difficult issue, and it's one that we're really aware of and considering closely as we do analysis and provide advice on possible measures with respect to the economic crisis in the air sector.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Thank you, Mr. Barcelou-Duval. I'll now move on to Mr. Bachrach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Keenan, for your answers so far. My next topic of questioning concerns the high-frequency rail project. And as we know, other countries around the world enjoy high-speed rail. I believe Canada is the only country in the G7 that lacks high-speed rail, and the proposed project would see trains traveling at speeds of around 170 kilometers an hour, whereas countries like France and Japan have trains that travel 320 kilometers an hour. Should Canadians be happy with an option that is still significantly behind what other countries are building and what other countries' citizens are utilizing?
Mr. Keenan.
Thank you for the question. There is, the member speaks to an area of significant work right now in the Government of Canada in terms of developing a potential project to dramatically improve passenger rail service in the Quebec City-Toronto corridor. The Transport Canada worked with Infrastructure Canada, with Via Rail and the Canada Infrastructure Bank, and we set up a joint project office, brought in some absolutely top-notch people in the world of developing passenger rail projects, and they are doing due diligence and creating analysis on options that the government could consider in moving forward to improve passenger rail service. And until there is that process gets to a next stage, it's hard to describe exactly what the service would look like. However, I would say that there is a potential, that there is a whole range of options in terms of improving frequency and improving speed to get better reliability and better travel time that are under consideration.
Mr. Bachrach?
And is your department considering options that would make us competitive with those other countries that I mentioned?
Mr. Keenan.
I think the focus is more on providing better, it's not so much an international point of competitiveness as opposed to providing better, more convenient and faster rail service to the large number of people that travel in the Quebec City to Toronto corridor.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach. We'll now move on for 5 minutes to Ms. Cusi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to all of the officials for being here today. You were so very kind to brief me. Gosh, what was less than 2 months ago now already, but time goes on. I always like to point out as well, I'm a very proud former public servant, having spent close to a decade and a half at GAC. So it's always lovely to be amongst former colleagues of the public service. Just sort of building on my main point with the minister earlier, and that is what I hope is true will be the release of some type of sector support in the very near future here. And as I said, the media reports are this will be sooner rather than later, which is excellent. I wanted to know from you what the implementation of sector support might look like, how what that possibly could look like if it would be done on a through regional initiatives, as we have seen with this first great piece with the North, if it is done on an application process, airline by airline, or if it's dependent upon whatever type of structure is used, be it debt equity or some type of aid. I was hoping that just for the sake of that, when this is announced, which I hope is soon, that implementation will be very fast and that these funds will be allowed to flow as quick as possible to the affected parts of the sector. Because in my opinion, we've seen some distribution of funds throughout the pandemic from the government, which were more timely than others. And if this is in fact happening, if this does in fact occur, I would just be interested to know what the implementation would look like and an idea as to timing. Thank you.
Mr. Keenan.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Great question, because there's obviously, I won't repeat what the minister said and the discussion in the first hour, but there's acute pressures and acute challenges in the sector. There's an active discussion of options in terms of the government's response. What I would say on implementation is that it is a key question, because once the government decides what and if and what and when they wish to do something as a matter of policy, then the next question is like, that's great. for it to matter, it has to be implemented. And I would say, in terms of implementation, it could be any of the options the member listed, depending upon what kind of decisions the government takes with respect to addressing the issues, which gets back to the comments the minister made. I would say implementation is something that officials are supposed to worry about and support the government on. And so I would say that whatever and whenever the government makes decisions with respect to these issues, we will certainly be working with our colleagues in other departments, and we'll certainly be working with the stakeholders in the sector to seek to implement them absolutely as quickly as possible, given the nature of the challenge.
Ms. Cusi?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Minister, for that excellent response. I really like that comment, to matter. It has to be implemented. That's fantastic. I'm going to go back to my colleague, Mr. Shipley's comments about rapid testing. And likewise, we've talked a lot on this call today about the implementation in Alberta of the YYC Coots Crossing. What would have to happen for this to occur nationally? I know that we touched upon it in Mr. Shipley's comments, but what would a national rollout of such a rapid testing process look like at our main ports, main airports, et cetera? If you could provide some insight for me as to that.
Great question. It's hard to predict, and it's virtually impossible to say the national rollout would be X, simply because it depends on a whole number of factors. The first is what we learned from the pilots. The second is the decisions by both, I would say, the federal government and provincial governments in terms of where to go with these kind of issues. And the third would be where our international partners go. And because it does look like we're headed to a system where there will be some kind of recognition, and if the work that's underway at ICAO that Canada's involved with pans out, that there would be some sort of rules of the road or rules of the air, if you will, with respect to kind of testing for international flights. I would say that when we look at sort of how to do all of that, you come back to first principles and how do you enable Canadians to travel by air, whether domestically or internationally, in a manner where they're safe and given the COVID threat. And there's a lot of things that testing is part of that, but there's a lot of things that go into that. One of them is the kind of the cleaning protocols, the mask wearing. Canada, I think we went in mid-April requiring passengers to wear masks on planes. And it turns out that the cleaning protocols of the airlines, the physics of how air moves within a plane, and strict protocols like masking, if all of that comes together and almost counterintuitively results in air travel being a reasonably low risk activity for passengers. And so we've worked really closely with the industry, and I must say, I think there's real leadership in the industry on the part of the airlines and the airports. They're under extreme financial and economic stress, but they're committed to doing whatever it takes to keep their clients safe. And so we've been able to put together, working with them, the flight plan. So Canada has something called a flight plan, which is a national plan for COVID-safe air travel. And we see testing as fitting into that. But I think the question is making it work from a system perspective, and there is progress to make. I think the pathway will depend on some government decisions, some international partner decisions, but also really close collaboration with the industry operators.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. I'll now move on to Mr. Sidhu for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'll be sharing my time with Mr. Alkhouri. Thank you to the officials for being here today and taking the time to be with us. Mr. Keenan, Deputy Minister, is it true that most European and U.S. airlines that mandated reimbursements also provided very significant sector-specific bailout packages to their airlines? For example, Lufthansa in Europe. Can you please comment on that?
The situation varies dramatically country by country, but the number of European countries have provided significant support, and the German government actually did make a significant investment in Lufthansa, for example. Air France has done the same with Air France KLM. The Netherlands is supposed to, but there's a bit of a question as to sort of how they'll proceed. But the general trend is there have been some significant investments or different types of financial assistance or taking ownership stakes by a number of European countries, and by the U.S. under the CARES Act, which one of the members mentioned earlier.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Mr. El-Khoury, I'll share my time with you.
Mr. El-Khoury.
Thank you, sir, for being here. As the minister said before, that health and service are going in parallel and priority for your department. As you know, the spreading of COVID is very, very important, and we have to take in all the steps that we could take it in order to control it. The best way to control this is to increase the number of rapid testing. I know my colleague spoke about it, but I insist to hear from you there if it's possible to comment on the pilot project for rapid testing for COVID-19 in the airport, all Canadian airports. What do you expect as a result, and how do you see it in other countries? Another thing also spoke about the incentive of zero emission and for vehicle. Is it possible to give more explanation about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. El-Khoury. Mr. Keenan.
Sure. So quickly on two different topics. To elaborate on the previous answer, we do see testing at the point of travel as part of the solution of safe travel and learning how to safely coexist with COVID for however long that takes. And we're hopeful of learning from the pilots, both the Alberta pilot and the Air Canada McMaster Toronto Airport pilot, a really good baseline of data in terms of how many people are traveling potentially with the virus, and the effectiveness of testing at different intervals in terms of screening them, and essentially looking for evidence that it is a robust alternative to a quarantine. And so this is not something that Transport Canada assesses on our own. In fact, we would defer to the Public Health Agency of Canada and Health Canada on that. So I think we're hopeful of learning a fair bit that will inform a number of operational questions, both in terms of how you conduct testing and make it work in a passenger flow system, how you get recognition between different countries and airlines on test results and airports, and then finally informing the decisions that governments can take in terms of how to make adjustments to border policies and quarantine policies.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Mr. El-Khoury, and thank you, Mr. Sidhu. We have come to 6:15 members. I do want to state two things. One is thank the clerk, the analysts, as well as all House personnel, the interpretation, as well as all those that have made this happen. I know you guys have been under a lot of stress in the last couple months, but to all of you, thank you for all you do for all of us. As well, I do want to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Todd, Mr. Roseau, Mr. Pilgrim, Ms. Maricetti, and of course our Deputy Minister, Mr. Keenan, for your time here today, and of course members of the committee. Lastly, I want to wish someone a very special happy birthday. It is Ms. Jazik's birthday today. She's turned the wonderful age of 29, and
19.
But
happy birthday, Elena.
Elena, you go and have a nice glass of wine now and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Van.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Happy birthday.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you.